Hello, Muslim friends of the world. That night, the sky over Los Angeles turned a fiery red. Flames consumed a densely populated residential and commercial district in the bustling city. Strong winds fueled the inferno, spreading it rapidly in all directions, destroying everything in its path. The wailing sirens of fire trucks pierced the night, but they seemed powerless against the relentless flames. Amid the chaos, news helicopters circled overhead, reporting on the massive disaster unfolding below. Jessica Carter, a reporter from CNN, spoke breathlessly into her microphone. "This is one of the worst fires Los Angeles has ever seen. Look around. There's nothing left, just ashes and rubble." But as the camera panned over the area, something unusual appeared on the screen. Amid the sea of fire and destruction stood a pristine white building, Masjid Noor. The structure looked like an oasis in a desert, untouched by the flames. "Is that a mosque?" Jessica murmured in disbelief. The cameraman quickly zoomed in to get a closer look. The mosque's gleaming dome reflected the moonlight, which struggled to penetrate the thick smoke filling the sky. Residents fleeing the inferno stopped in their tracks, staring in awe at the mosque. "How is this possible?" asked an elderly man, his voice trembling. "My house is gone, but that mosque, it's completely unharmed." Firefighters approaching the mosque paused at its gates. David Miller, a veteran firefighter with over 20 years of experience, stared at the scene, his jaw clenched. "I've seen a lot of fires in my career, but this doesn't make sense," he said to his colleague. "The flames should have consumed everything, but it's like the mosque is protected by something." As the fire raged on around it, dozens of journalists began arriving at the scene, drawn by reports of the fireproof mosque. Cameras from various news outlets captured the white building from every angle. Journalists began calling it a miracle in the middle of hellfire. One local resident, a young woman named Sarah, whose home had been reduced to ashes, approached a reporter and said, "Tonight I lost everything. But when I look at that mosque, my heart feels calm. It's like God is trying to tell us something." As night deepened, the mosque continued to command attention. The fire that had roared so fiercely around it began to die down, leaving the mosque standing unscathed amidst a landscape of ash and devastation. Inside the mosque, Sheikh Abdullah al-Hakim, the imam, sat cross-legged, leading the congregation in zikr, remembrance of God, and prayer. The worshippers remained calm, even as the flames had approached within mere meters of the mosque's walls. When the prayers concluded, Sheikh Abdullah stepped outside and stood at the mosque's main entrance. He gazed at the crowd of journalists and onlookers gathered outside the gates. With a gentle smile, he said, "When Allah protects, nothing can touch it. This mosque is just a building, but it stands as a sign that Allah wants to remind us all, turn back to Him." Sheikh Abdullah's words left many in the crowd speechless. Journalists who had initially come to chase a sensational story began to sense that something far greater was at play. Jessica Carter stared at the mosque for a long time, then whispered softly to herself, "Maybe there's a reason I was assigned to cover this story tonight." That night, the fire may have reduced much of the city to ashes, but for those who witnessed the miracle of Masjid Noor, a different kind of fire was kindled, a fire of curiosity and a yearning to seek a greater truth. The following morning, Masjid Noor became the center of global attention. News of the fireproof mosque spread like wildfire across international media platforms, from television broadcasts to social media posts. People from across the city and even from other parts of the world flocked to see the miracle with their own eyes. But the most significant attention came from journalists. Jessica Carter, who had reported live from the scene the night before, returned to the mosque with a full crew. That morning, the atmosphere around the mosque was peaceful. There was no trace of smoke or embers near the building, as if the massive fire that had devastated the area had never touched it. "Jessica, what made you come back here?" asked one of her colleagues. I don't know," she replied hesitantly, her eyes fixed on the mosque's shimmering dome. "But I feel like there's something here I need to understand." In the mosque courtyard, Sheikh Abdullah al-Hakim stood calmly, welcoming anyone who wanted to ask questions. Journalists from various countries crowded around him, thrusting microphones and cameras toward him. Despite the commotion, Sheikh Abdullah remained patient, addressing each question with warmth and sincerity. "How did this mosque survive the fire?" asked one reporter, breaking the silence. Sheikh Abdullah responded in a gentle yet firm tone. "Everything that happens in this world is by Allah's will. We may not always understand His plans, but He always has a purpose. This mosque was spared not because of the building itself, but as a reminder of Allah's power and mercy." Jessica stepped closer, feeling compelled to ask something more personal. "Sheikh Abdullah, I've seen how people find peace here, even after losing everything. How is it possible to feel calm amid such devastation?" Sheikh Abdullah looked at Jessica with deep compassion. "True peace comes from faith, from knowing that Allah is always with us, in both joy and hardship. When we surrender to Him, our hearts find rest, no matter what happens around us." His answer left Jessica speechless. As a journalist who had covered countless disasters worldwide, she had never heard an explanation so simple yet profoundly moving. That day, Sheikh Abdullah invited the journalists to step inside the mosque and experience it for themselves. Many hesitated, unsure if they should accept the invitation, but their curiosity eventually outweighed their reservations. Jessica was one of the first to walk through the mosque's doors. She was struck by the beauty of its interior, not because it was lavish, but because it was serene. The soft carpets, the intricate calligraphy on the walls, and the natural light streaming through the windows created an atmosphere of tranquility she had never felt before. Inside, Sheikh Abdullah explained the meaning of prayer and the essence of Islam. He recited a verse from the Quran. "Whoever fears Allah, He will make for him a way out and provide for him from where he does not expect." Quran 65, verse 2-3. Jessica felt as though the verse was meant specifically for her. She thought of her fast-paced, high-pressure life as a journalist, always searching for happiness, but never truly finding it. "May I ask a question?" said Pierre Dubois, a senior journalist from France. "If Allah is all-powerful, why does He allow disasters like this fire to happen?" Sheikh Abdullah smiled gently. "Sometimes Allah tests us to see how we respond. Will we blame Him, or will we turn back to Him with gratitude and awareness? This fire is a tragedy, but look around. Because of it, so many hearts are now seeking the truth." The Imam's answer once again left the room silent. The stillness in the mosque felt profound, as if something invisible yet deeply meaningful was moving within everyone's hearts. After leaving the mosque, Jessica sat in the courtyard, lost in thought. Her colleagues tried to call her back to the studio, but she refused. "I need more time," she said quietly. Meanwhile, Pierre continued to engage Sheikh Abdullah in a deep discussion about Islam's teachings. Other journalists joined in, asking questions, reading Quranic verses, and learning more about what they had always perceived as a distant and foreign faith. By the end of the day, many of the journalists felt something stirring within them, an inexplicable pull toward the teachings they had just encountered. For Jessica, it was more than curiosity. It was a sense of longing, a yearning for the peace she had witnessed in the faces of those who prayed in the mosque. That evening, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I wasn't sent here by chance. Maybe this is the beginning of something far greater." That day, Masjid Nur transformed from a place of worship into a beacon for hundreds, even thousands, of people seeking answers. Journalists who had initially come to report on the fireproof mosque were now returning with deeper curiosity. They were no longer chasing a sensational headline. They were chasing something that stirred within their hearts. Jessica Carter was among them. For the past week, she had been unable to stop thinking about the mosque, the serenity it exuded, and the profound words of Sheikh Abdullah. "True peace comes from faith," his voice echoed in her mind, as if guiding her towards something she had long been searching for. Jessica wasn't alone. Pierre Dubois, the senior journalist from France, had spent hours in the mosque speaking with Sheikh Abdullah. Several other reporters from Asia, Europe, and beyond had joined discussions about Islam, reading verses from the Quran, and learning about its teachings. A historic gathering. 1 week after the fire, Sheikh Abdullah announced that Masjid Nur would hold an open event for anyone curious about Islam. The announcement spread quickly, drawing not only locals but people from across the globe. Journalists, residents, and curious onlookers gathered in the mosque's courtyard under the clear blue sky. Sheikh Abdullah stood at the center, his calm presence commanding attention without effort. He began with a prayer, then addressed the crowd. "We are all here today because of the fire," he said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. But that fire was not an ending. It was a beginning. It destroyed what was temporary, yet it illuminated what is eternal. Allah allowed this event not to punish, but to remind us of His power and mercy. He is calling us to reflect and return to Him. The crowd listened in rapt silence, many nodding as if His words resonated deeply within them. Jessica felt a lump in her throat, her heart pounding as if it were responding to a call she had ignored for too long. "Sheikh Abdullah," Jessica said, breaking the silence, "if someone wants to find peace, where do they start?" The Imam smiled warmly. "Peace begins with recognizing that there is only one God and that we are His creation. When we acknowledge this with sincerity, we open the door to true peace in our hearts." Jessica fell silent, her emotions swirling. For years, she had been searching for fulfillment in her career, wealth, and accolades. Yet none of it had brought her the peace she now glimpsed in the faces of those who prayed at the mosque. The moment of truth. As the event continued, Pierre Dubois stood up. His face was calm, yet his voice carried a resolute tone. "Sheikh Abdullah," he said, "for days I've been reading, questioning, and reflecting. I believe I'm ready. I want to bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is His messenger." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of astonishment. Sheikh Abdullah extended his hand and invited Pierre forward. In front of the gathering, Pierre recited the Shahada in a clear voice. "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." The moment he finished, tears streamed down his face. The crowd erupted into a chorus of takbir. "Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!" Jessica watched the scene, her heart racing. Something within her told her it was her time. She stood up, trembling yet determined. I want to say it too," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. Sheikh Abdullah looked at her with kindness. "Are you sure, Jessica?" She nodded. "I've spent my whole life searching for peace in the wrong places, but now I know where it is. I'm ready." Jessica stepped forward, her voice steady as she repeated the Shahada. The crowd, now moved to tears, chanted takbir once more. One by one, other journalists stood, declaring their intention to embrace Islam. By the end of the day, hundreds of people had recited the Shahada, united by a newfound faith. Cut a light that never dies. The day became a historic moment, not just for the mosque, but for the entire world. News of the mass conversion of journalists spread like wildfire, capturing the attention of millions. Masjid Nur was no longer just a symbol of survival amidst fire. It became a symbol of spiritual awakening, of hearts ignited by the light of faith. Jessica, who had once lived in the relentless pursuit of worldly success, now felt an indescribable calm in her heart. "I came here for a story," she thought, smiling to herself. "But what I found was far greater. I found the truth." Pierre returned to France, dedicating himself to spreading knowledge about Islam. Jessica began documenting her journey, hoping to inspire others who might also be searching for peace. Masjid Nur, standing unscathed in the middle of a charred landscape, continued to draw people from all walks of life. It was no longer just a mosque. It was a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, the light of faith can guide us to something greater. And as Jessica watched the sun set behind the mosque, she whispered to herself, "This light, it will never go out."